Hello, everyone, and welcome back to AstrologyNow podcast. My name is Christine Rodriguez, and in this segment, we are going to discuss the upcoming retrograde of Jupiter that will take place on June 20th, 2021. It's about 10 days from when I record this, 9 days from when you may hear it, and so it's coming up on us pretty quickly. And before we get started, I do want to remind you all that I have a new program that I'm super excited about. It's the Inner Knowing Vedic coaching program. And so it's a 9-month program that is designed to help you build a life that feels like it's from a place of authenticity, connection, and clarity, utilizing things like Ayurveda, Vedic astrology, and of course, personal introspection. And so again, I'm super excited about it. If you want to learn more, you can go to my website, innerknowing.yoga, click on the tabs, and then go to the Inner Knowing Vedic coaching program, where you can schedule a call to learn more about it with me. Also, please remember that I'm a Vedic sidereal astrologer and will be using the sidereal zodiac. So getting into Jupiter retrograde. So what is Jupiter and what does Jupiter represent? So Jupiter is the great benefic. Jupiter brings blessings. It's the guru, it's the teacher. It teaches for the sheer love of teaching. Jupiter represents philosophy, religion, spirituality. It's also wealth and finances. It can bring about a lot of money. Jupiter is expansion and optimism. So Saturn is this planet that's restricting, and it's, it has a lot of boundaries, and it has like a really strong container. Whereas Jupiter is constantly expanding and growing. So it does have this element of growth to it, which can be a really powerful thing, but it can also sometimes make explosive events bigger. It was one of the planets that was involved in 9/11. It was one of the planets that was involved with COVID. It took this event and it expanded it. It made it bigger. So Jupiter is associated with good things. It is the guru. And depending on the environment it's in, sometimes it can create this expansion of something that isn't as beneficial as one may expect. But it is important overall to remember that Jupiter is the guru and it is trying to act as a benefic. That's its natural state of being. And one last thing I'll add before we really get into the material is that Jupiter can also be quite dogmatic and it can be quite radical. Jupiter is our belief systems. It's our faith. And so again, sometimes it can go a little over the top and it can get really, really dogmatic. It can get really, really radical. Something else to keep in mind when we're discussing Jupiter and this Jupiter retrograde. And if you listen to the Saturn podcast, I was talking about how Saturn goes retrograde pretty often, or it's retrograde for a large chunk of the year. And Jupiter is the same way. It's one of these planets where the retrograde is going to be a little bit more subtle. It's not as acute as like a Mercury retrograde. It's much more subtle, but it's also very deep. And there's a lot of deep personal introspection that can happen. And of course, globally, when Jupiter retrogrades, there certainly is an impact that it has. And so Jupiter will go retrograde on June 20th, 2021 at 8 degrees of Aquarius. Jupiter will retrograde back into the sign of Capricorn, which is super significant. And we're going to talk about that. But Jupiter will move back into Capricorn on September 14th, 2021. Jupiter will go direct on October 18th, 2021 at about 28 degrees of Capricorn. And Jupiter will re-enter Aquarius on November 20th. So between September 14th and November 20th, Jupiter is back in Capricorn. Jupiter is technically debilitated in Capricorn. And of course, if you've been following astrology, you know that Jupiter and Saturn in Capricorn, Saturn brings a great deal of strength to it. So it isn't the worst thing in the world, but it's definitely going to bring some of these upheavals. And mostly what I'm seeing is that with this Jupiter retrograde, there is going to be some interesting effect on the economy. I do think that the economy is going to see some ups and downs. I think that it is going to be challenged. And we also have to take into consideration that The sign of Aquarius is the sign of humanity and the collective and networks and each other. It also has a lot to do with healing and healing sciences. The star, the nakshatra of Shatabisha, is within Aquarius for a reason. It's the 100 healers. There's this strong connection to healing and helping. It's a collective sign. And so as Jupiter is going retrograde, I'm thinking that this is going to be a time for society to reassess what have we been doing since Jupiter has entered Aquarius. How have we been taking action? How have we been treating each other? How have we been handling things? And is it going well? A, and what changes can we make? B. So it's reassessing what we've been doing for humanity, what we've been doing for the collective, what we've been doing for healing, seeing if it's been working, and then making any adjustments that need to be adjusted. So I do think it is going to be a period of reflection in that way. And Jupiter is, of course, also the guru, faith, our belief systems. And so once Jupiter starts going retrograde, I do think that there's going to be a lot of confusion on what people are believing. For several months, we've been discussing that information is going to start coming out. It's partially because of the placement of Jupiter. It's nearing Neptune. Neptune is all about delusion and deception and hidden things, and the moon of the United States chart. So having information come out in the third house of the United States too. So this is all about communications and publications and things of that nature. And in addition to that, K2 is in the sign of Scorpio. And if you listen to my segment on that, it's like K2 does some interesting things with it when it's in Scorpio. It kind of digs stuff up and reveals things. So I do think that we will continue to learn new information, and some of it may be surprising. And during this retrograde period, it could be that people are reassessing what they were believing, kind of going back and reevaluating what their belief systems have been, what they've been having faith in, what they've been placing faith in. That's the thing, is because when information comes out, especially in regards to the government, like let's just say information comes out about the government and it surprises everybody, you're going to reassess your faith in that establishment. And so I do think that faith in various aspects of life could be challenged. And it may not necessarily be like, oh, you had all this faith and now you have no faith. It could be that you're contemplating, where am I supposed to put my belief in? What am I supposed to be following? Who am I supposed to be listening to? So these areas, again, can be, I don't even want to use the word challenge. It's just going to be an opportunity to grow and an opportunity to evolve. And I think that's something that's super important to note is that we're all people, and people are running this planet. And just by virtue of being a person, we are prone to making mistakes, and we're prone to disappointment. We're prone to doing things for our self-interest. That's just the human nature a lot of the time. And so none of this and none of what I'm saying is to instill fear or to demonize anyone or to say that information's going to come out and now suddenly we all know that this one person is demonic, right? Like that's not my message. That's not what I'm trying to convey at all. But because we are all people and because people run things and people get power and whatever, I do think that we're going to learn information that disappoints a lot of people and confuses a lot of people and makes us reevaluate our belief system and our faith. And this could also be something that happens in your personal life. And this, of course, depends on where Jupiter is going to be transiting for you. And on my Patreon account, it would be patreon.com/astrologynowpodcast. I do try to spend time discussing how this is going to impact each of the 12 zodiac signs. So if you're a patron, know that should be coming soon. And so for you, if you are a Leo ascendant, and Jupiter has been in your 7th house and now it's retrograding back into the 6th, it could be reevaluating your relationships. Someone from the past may come back. You could be reassessing how you operate in relationships. There could have been an event that brings a lot of contemplation to relationships. If you are an Aries moon or an Aries ascendant and Jupiter is retrograding in your 11th, it could be your long-term goals, your hopes and your wishes, what you desire. It could also do with finances, reevaluating these areas. Another example, if you are let's Aquarius. Aquarius is Jupiter's on the ascendant. It's moving back, reevaluating yourself, how you operate, your personal beliefs, your personal ideals, what you have faith in. Could also have to do with finances too, because Jupiter does have to do with wealth. So you want to see where Jupiter is going to be retrograding for you. And this is going to give us a lot of insight into what areas of life it may affect and what may come up. For everyone, it's going to be different. And I think that it's really important to not get super tied up in one way of viewing things or one way of being. I think it's super wise when Jupiter retrogrades to be really open to reflection, really open to personal introspection and looking inward and reevaluating what you believe in and if it's in alignment for you. Do your beliefs contribute to a happy, optimistic life? Do your beliefs and what you have faith in bring you joy and bring you a sense of security? Because that's what faith is all about. It's supposed to bring you security. It's supposed to bring you serenity and a peace of mind. Could also be reevaluating your finances and how you work with money and how we treat one another and how we view one another, because this is more of a collective way. As we're watching in the world, I was saying information may come out. We may learn things that challenge us. Also, it's a wonderful time to reflect on how do we treat one another? How do we operate within the collective? Is it that when there's a disagreement, or we don't share a belief about something, we completely cut ties with that person? We have a ton of judgment. We don't have a whole lot of curiosity. We just make all of these assumptions and paste it on this person. Or is it possible to stay open, to stay receptive, to stay curious, and to approach everyone with love and from a heart of service, even if we don't necessarily agree with them? And there are a lot of things right now that I think that people are really disagreeing on and that I think that is really bringing a lot of tension. And I think, let's go back to my favorite quote from the Bhagavatam. Staying as humble as a blade of grass and as steady as a tree. Is it possible to approach people with differences from a place of love and humility? When we're humble, there's a place of curiosity. There's a place of knowing that we don't know everything for sure. We don't have every single thing figured out. We are open and receptive to new possibilities, to new ideas, to new beliefs. But firm as a tree and standing truly rooted in what we do know to be true and what we know to work for ourselves. So it's like this balance of staying really strong and having a lot of inner fortitude while still being soft and receptive to the outer world so that we can learn about humanity. Because this experience as humans on Earth, this experience for all of us, it isn't about developing this belief system and then only staying in that belief system, shutting out the rest of the world and only going by what we think. I believe that it's about being open, seeing how many different people live their lives, how many different people experience the world, what they find important, what they find valuable, take what I can learn from them, and for what I don't agree with, it can just be a neutral thing. I really, if anything comes across in this podcast, it's just, please don't let things divide us. Please don't let anything in the media divide us. Don't let opinions divide us. I mean, there are obviously boundaries to these things, right? Because there are some really harmful opinions out there, personally harmful opinions out there. So it's like, I trust everyone listening to this podcast to work in a way that is safe for them and maintains personal boundaries. And if it's possible to create connection, let's create connection. And that's what Aquarius is all about. And so let's see. I want to see if there's anything else that I want to talk about. I want to talk about the retrograde, wanted to define Jupiter, talked about the retrograde dates, talked about information coming out. We talked about the economy going up and down. When Jupiter goes back into Capricorn, I do think that this is going to be a time that we see things really kind of shift. So keep that in mind. Conflicting ideas. So July and August, I think, are going to be very challenging. And I've been looking at that for a while. I forget which podcast it was on, maybe the Saturn podcast, but Mars and Venus are going to be traveling together, and they're going to be in this really sensitive point between Rahu and Ketu. And Jupiter will be as well at that time period. And so I do think that we will continue to see rising tension between July and August. And I do just want you all to be ready for that. Because I think it is going to get relatively intense, and I think that it will have to do with world leaders. I think it will have to do with diplomacy and belief systems, and people are just going to be clashing. And we're already seeing clashes. We're already seeing clashes around the world. We're seeing a lot of tension. We're seeing a lot of disagreements, and we are seeing information coming out. The thing is, though, is that the information that is coming out is confusing. And that's exactly what I thought would happen with that Neptune element. And I think it will continue to be confusing. I think that information will be coming out. People, their faith is going to be tested. What they believe to be true is going to be tested. And it's going to take some time to really figure out what's real and what's not. And again, I think that's going to throw some fuel to the fire that we're going to see between July and August. And something else that I always like to remind people about is that when we're looking at astrology, we're looking at a weather forecast. It's an astrological weather forecast. That means it's going to be raining. And so you get to decide, are you going to dress appropriately? Are you going to bring the umbrella? Are you going to wear your shoes? Or are you going to go outside with a t-shirt and shorts on, or whatever kind of example you want to use. So if we know ahead of time that July and August are going to be intense and bring a certain level of intensity, let's plan for intensity, and let's use our personal will and our personal control of ourselves to act in alignment with what's best for ourselves and act in alignment with what's best for everybody. That's what Aquarius is all about. So just a very brief recap. So globally, Jupiter retrograde, I think that it is going to bring some issues with finances and the economy. I think that it is going to make us reevaluate how we have been operating as a community, how we've been operating as a human network. Have we been treating each other equally? Have we been handling crisis appropriately? How have we been working on things as a globe since Jupiter entered Aquarius? What needs to be refined? What has been working? What hasn't been working? How do we need to reassess this and rebuild it to be more effective? As Jupiter moves back into Capricorn, I think this will continue to have an effect on the economy and finances. And on a personal level, it's a time to look at your birth chart or join Patreon and find out how Jupiter is going to impact your sign. And for you, how have you been operating in society? How have you been connecting with people and collaborating with others? Have you been open to new ideas and new possibilities? Or maybe have you been a little shut off? And just don't judge yourself about any of it. Just notice. Just a reflection exercise. Also, your belief systems, what you value, how you handle your finances, what you find that brings you optimism and expansion. These things may be changing, and it's time to go back and reassess and be malleable. Allow yourself to shift and change, because in these periods of time, clinging to something can be relatively challenging. And this is an opportunity for you to find your alignment. So allow yourself to explore, allow yourself to ask questions, be open to the new ways of connecting to yourself spiritually or connecting to philosophy. And just know that your values and what you find spirituality in, what you find your connection in, these things may be changing, and it may be time to evolve and grow in this way. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope that you have a better idea of what Jupiter retrograde may bring. If you would like to schedule a reading with me, I am doing readings again. You can book your own reading at innerknowing.yoga and then go to readings. If you would like to calculate your Vedic birth chart, you can go to my website, innerknowing.yoga, click on offerings and then birth chart to calculate your birth chart. Of course, I would love to see you all on Patreon, and I will talk to you all very soon. Again, my name is Christine Rodriguez, and this is Astrology Now. Thank you so much.